Shalom Aleichem and welcome to Machin Leira online smicha. In this week's Parsha, Parsha's Mikeitz, there is a interesting tidbit of the story that has a relevance to a Halacha. And that is when the brothers, the Shvatim, arrive in Mitzrayim, so the Pasuk says that Yosef recognized them. However, in Pasuk Perik Membeis Pasuk Ches, it says, "Vayaker Yosef es Echav." Yosef recognized his brothers. V'heim lo yikiru. However, they did not recognize that it was their brother Yosef who was the Mishnah Lamelech. And Rashi brings what Chazal say, "Melamed sheyatza b'loy chasima zaken." That it's because Yosef, when he left, he was 17 years old. He left without a beard. Uba b'chasima zaken. And now he's with a beard, so they didn't recognize him. However, and the other way around, Yosef, his brothers, he did recognize because they all had a beard when he was taken away, when he was sold to the Mitzrayim or whatever. So therefore, that's the reason. That is the reason why he recognized them and they didn't recognize him. Actually, in the Medrash, in Bereshis Rabbah, Tzadik Aleph Vav, he says, the Medrash says another way how Yosef knew who they were and they didn't know who he was. The Medrash says, because Yosef made a rule that anybody entering Mitzrayim for whatever reason, for business or to collect food, buy food, as they enter in, sort of like you give in your passport, you have to sign your name and your father's name. And when the Shvatim came, they did the same thing. They wrote their name and Bnei Yaakov. Every evening, Yosef would read. Yosef, knowing that this is the plan, this is what's going to happen, that his brothers are going to end up in Mitzrayim. Every evening, the notes were brought to Yosef, and Yosef would scan through all the notes to know who was there. So he knew that his brothers are alive. So that's arrived. And that's why Vayaker Yosef es Achav, Yosef recognized them, but they did not recognize him. The Ramban asks a very Parsha question. The Ramban, again in Perik Membeis Pasuk Ches, asks, L'chayra, Yisachar and Zvulun weren't too much older than Yosef. They were maybe a year or two older. So if Yosef was 17, they were 18, 19. So the Ramban says, just like Yosef, the brothers didn't recognize Yosef because he didn't have a beard when he left, and now he does, should be the same. Yosef shouldn't recognize his brothers, Yisachar and Zvulun. Why did he recognize them? And the Ramban gives two answers. Answer number one is, because Yosef, when they came as a bunch and they came as a group, Yosef maybe didn't recognize them, his closest in age brothers. But because they're the older brothers, he recognized because he already knew what they looked like with a beard on. So once he recognized them, he realized that this must be their brother too. So he recognized Yisachar and Zvulun also. And that is one answer is given, that the Ramban gives. The second answer the Ramban gives, that he was able to identify them because there was no real roadblock, nothing stopping him from looking and staring and seeing, oh, this is my brothers. But the brothers couldn't figure out that this is Yosef, even if they stood next to him, because in their wildest dream, in their furthest imagination, they would never believe that the brother who they know they sold as an Eved was what became the Shalit al Eretz Mitzrayim, became in control. So they had this sort of roadblock from believing such a thing. That's why they didn't recognize him, and he recognizes them. Now the Orach Chaim HaKadosh adds. The Orach Chaim HaKadosh says, we know the pasuk says, "Kamayim hapanim lepanim, kain leiv ha'adam la'adam." And they know the famous example: a person looks into a mirror, he sees his reflection. A person looks into water, you see a reflection. Meaning to say, the way you look at somebody, if you show somebody love, he will respond with love. You show anger, he'll start. The same when Yosef starts recognizing them, it should be an automatic feeling, especially when he starts staring at them then it has to arouse within them a feeling towards him too. They should also be able to realize that this is his brother. But he says that that's the reason it didn't happen by Yosef and his brothers, is because even though Yosef was able to see that, his brothers couldn't in the wildest dreams imagine that this is him. And that's why, despite the fact of Kamayim upon him, it didn't work in that case. Now, this is a halacha, it comes out the halacha l'maisa too, because Yosef, the Gemara in Ksubis, Daf Chav Zayin Amud Beis, brings a story of Mori, or according to some others, it's Chana bar Isak, that a person came and introduces himself to this Mori and says, Mr. Mori, Rabbi Mori, I want you to know, I know your father died and there is a Yerusha, there's inheritance. I want to make you aware, I am your brother. And if I am your brother, I deserve some of the Yerusha. Mori hears this. He says, somebody's taking advantage of his assets now because he never knew about this person. He says, clearly, I don't recognize you. I don't know anything about you. And I'm sorry, I'm not giving you any of the money. So they went to Rav Chisda. Rav Chisda said, yep, Rav Mori is correct. If he says he knew nothing, he saw nothing, he doesn't know of any brother, he doesn't have to split the money with this guy who claims he's his brother. Don't you recognize? Don't you see him? So Rav Chisda said that you learn from our pasuk that sometimes to see a person as a youngster and to see him again as an adult, if in between he grew a beard, the fact that he grew a beard, Mori had the right to say, you don't look like anything like me. You don't look like anything like my brother. Even if I had a brother back then, you don't look like that brother that I know you have because you look completely different. Why? Because now he showed up as an older person with a beard. And he says that because of this claim, Rav Chisda said that the brother who claims that he has rights to this Yerusha has to bring Eidim that he is his brother, and if not, without the Eidim, he can't collect the Yerusha. Now there is a sefer called Zois Menuchasi that causes a little uproar to compare this story in the Gemara to the story of Yosef and the Shvatim. L'chayr is completely different, because by Yosef and Mori are two different stories. Here's a guy that shows up and says, hello, I am your brother. So the guy tells you, I am your brother. And despite the guy says, I am your brother, Mori felt so sure that he's not, that he said, Beferish, I don't know of you, I don't recognize you, and you're not my brother. Now that's much, much deeper than the case of Yosef. Yosef, nobody introduced themselves as, I am your brother, and he says, really? I remember my brother's being clean shaven, or no, and suddenly you don't look like my brother. But that's different than the case of Mori, where the guy clearly says, I am your brother, and he responds, you're not my brother. When a guy comes to you and says, I'm your brother, you start thinking. And if despite all that, he nevertheless screams, you're not my brother, it's a much stronger defense, it's a much stronger rebuttal than the case of Yosef and his Shvatim. And again, in the Sefer Zois Menuchasi, and some of the Achrayim afterwards also discuss how could the Gemara derive this halacha from the case of Yosef.